lies at the core of the movement called Gamergate is actually concern amongst gamers that they're being deceived, that the people who write about new games have got rather too cosy with the people who make them, and that they're damaging the industry by failing to be honest with the readers and the game players. Erik Kain is a contributor to Forbes magazine. I asked him if it was time now for the industry and the media covering the industry to be more mature and more open with the consumers.
I mean, I think more transparency is always a good thing. When a lot of this went down, initially the Escapist magazine was very sort of upfront about some of the problems that they saw in their own ethics guidelines, and they were very upfront about how they were going to address those. I personally think that kind of the problem we're seeing with the whole Gamergate controversy right now in terms of journalistic ethics is that everyone is so angry and there's so little dialogue going on that it looks like, you know, these sites don't want to talk about it because they have something to hide. I think that the more upfront that any of these sites can be, the better, whether or not there's actually any problems going on.
Well, I was going to say, and maybe they do have something to hide. I mean, if there is this cozy relationship going on, then nobody wants to reveal it, do they?
I personally think that a lot of the problem is more out in the open rather than, you know, something to hide. You know, you have a lot of these publishing companies or these video game publishers pay for press to go to these events, preview events where they go and they're, you know, their plane tickets and their hotel rooms are all paid for, and then they're sat down with the developers and they're shown the video game, and, you know, there's free food and free drinks, and it's all very flattering as a journalist to be wined and dined and, you know, to get an all-expenses-paid trip to go look at a video game. But I think that it creates problematic coverage of that video game from a, you know, consumer standpoint.
So what's the answer then? Should there in fact be some kind of code of ethics, perhaps, that everyone signs up to? So it's all out there, that there's full disclosure, or they recuse themselves from reviewing particular things if they have links to them. Does it need that kind of input now?
I honestly don't have an exact answer. There's been some interesting ideas floating around. A consumer group dedicated to the video game industry, ombudsman for video game publications that can review what's being written from an outside perspective, a code of ethics that everybody signs on to. I mean, these are all worthwhile ideas, and I hope that what comes out of this is that, you know, the smart people and the honest people in the industry or in the media can sit down and actually have this conversation.
Do you think it's possible to say, because gaming has been a bit on the outskirts, a bit away from the mainstream perhaps, and is now coming into the mainstream, a huge multi-billion-dollar industry, that now they've got to grow up and take it in a more sensible, mature way and make sure that it's clean, it's a clean industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I've written about this before, I think that a lot of what we're seeing is growing pains. The video game industry is growing up. It's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. The gaming press is very young compared to the film. People covering film, writing about film criticism. People often say we don't have a Roger Ebert of video game criticism. And the fact is that it's just all still shaping. It's you know, the average age for gamers is getting older, but still compared to a lot of other pop culture and just sort of higher culture, it's very young, and the press does have a long ways to go. The industry has a long ways to go, and that even ties into some of these issues of misogyny and sexism. You know, I think that far more important than, you know, what we hear about in sort of the dramatic stories of harassment is just the fact that this is such a young and male-driven industry, that there's just a lot more men working in the industry, and kind of all of these problems, I think, stem from the fact that this is an industry and a medium that is really coming into its own sort of very painfully.
Erik Kain there. David, I'm sure you're not a gamer, but perhaps, I mean, do you understand the whole problem that he seems to be trying to get at, that this is an industry that's largely grown over the last decade, I suppose, and perhaps some of the things we're used to with people reviewing films or books or plays or anything like that, those kind of things don't exist in it, almost.
Why do you make the assumption that I'm not a gamer?
Oh, go on then, David.
Because I'm old or something?
No.
Is it because I'm old
or something?
So
you're up every night, are you, playing these games, yes?
I am a gamer.
Okay.
I have a console, I have a game, and I do actually play games. And I think, as far as this whole issue is concerned, what it really boils down to, transparency is partially correct, but ultimately you should let market forces decide whether or not a game is going to be popular. A critic can write up on a particular game and say it is the best thing ever, and you buy it, you play it, and then you say, this is the worst game I've ever seen in my life, and I'm going to tell all my friends about it. And it is really that communication.
But you've got to know whether or not that gamer, in fact, is getting a backhander, the reviewer is getting a backhander from the people who are making the game, and then it becomes unreliable. If you don't know that, you can't judge whether it's good or not.
Well, again, up to a point. The thing is, I mean, where does this end? I mean, we know that this goes on in many different types of industries. I mean, for instance, food critics. Some of them, will advertise the fact that they are going into a restaurant to critique a particular chef, and then they suddenly get the best service ever because people know that he is a food critic, and so therefore his food comes out piping hot and everybody else's gets cold food.
It does, yeah.
So therefore the critic will write up a good review on the restaurant. You go there and then you suddenly find that the food is absolutely awful.
Yeah,
and then you will tell your friends. So we know it goes on, Roger. I mean, what we're talking about is an industry that is growing up. That I fully accept.
All right.
The market forces will decide.
Let me bring in Cecily at this point, because it was an interesting point there also being made about, well, kind of a sexism in it. I don't know how true that is. What do you think?
I can't believe we're having a conversation right now about ethics when the whole conversation seems to be, to me, about sexism. I mean, honestly, as far as I understand it, I have two very good friends. One, Michael Thompson, who is a very widely respected video games journalist. I have literally never seen an industry of journalists that take themselves so seriously or their values so seriously. He's my writing partner. I sit next to him writing my own book as he plays video games for like up to 12 hours a day. I mean, these people take themselves really freaking seriously. And in case you've never met a video games journalist, like, they're not exactly the people who go around, chasing tail. And beyond that, it's like, who gives a F who this woman slept with or allegedly did not sleep with? It's none of your business. I'm sex positive, too.
All right, let's not get into that right at this point, because we're going to take a break for some news. We'll be back just a moment here on Business Matters.